Well, so pleased to have you back for the final study in the tabernacle. And today we're not actually looking at the tabernacle. We're going to be looking at the high priest and what he wore, because like the tabernacle, the things that the high priest wore were symbolic, had heavenly meaning beyond their earthly function. So follow along with me. It's a bit of a long reading. Follow along as I read from Exodus 39, 1 through 30. From the blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, they made woven garments for ministering in the sanctuary. They also made sacred garments for Aaron, as the Lord commanded Moses. They made the ephod of gold and of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and of finely twisted linen. They hammered out thin sheets of gold and cut strands to be worked into the blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and fine linen, the work of skilled hands. They made shoulder pieces for the ephod, which were attached to two of its corners so it could be fastened. Its skillfully woven waistband was like it, of one piece with the ephod and made with gold and with blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and with finely twisted linen, as the Lord commanded Moses. They mounted the onyx stones in gold filigree settings and engraved them like a seal with the names of the sons of Israel. Then they fastened them on the shoulder pieces of the ephod as memorial stones for the sons of Israel, as the Lord commanded Moses. They fashioned the breastpiece, the work of a skilled craftsman. They made it like the ephod, of gold and of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn of finely twisted linen. It was square, a span long and a span wide, and folded double. Then they mounted 4 rows of precious stones on it. The first row was carnelian, chrysolite, and beryl. The second row was turquoise, lapis lazuli, and emerald. The third row was jacinth, agate, and amethyst. The fourth row was topaz, onyx, and jasper. They were mounted in gold filigree settings. There were 12 stones, one for each of the names of the sons of Israel, each engraved like a seal with the name of one of the 12 tribes. For the breastplate, they made braided chains of pure gold like a rope. They made 2 gold filigree settings and 2 gold rings, and fastened the rings to 2 of the corners of the breastpiece. They fastened the 2 gold chains to the rings at the corners at the breastpiece, and the other ends of the chains to the 2 settings, attaching them to the shoulder pieces of the ephod at the front. They made 2 gold rings and attached them to the other 2 corners of the breastpiece on the inside edge next to the ephod. Then they made 2 more gold rings and attached them to the bottom of the shoulder pieces on the front of the ephod, close to the seam just above the waistband of the ephod. They tied the rings of the breastpiece to the rings of the ephod with blue cord, connecting it to the waistband so that the breastpiece could not swing out from the ephod, as the Lord commanded Moses. They made the robe of the ephod entirely of blue cloth, the work of a weaver, with an opening in the center of the robe like the opening of a collar, and a band around this opening so that it would not tear. They made pomegranates of blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and finely twisted linen around the hem of the robe. And they made bells of pure gold and attached them around the hem between the pomegranates. The bells and the pomegranates alternated around the hem of the robe to be worn ministering as the Lord commanded Moses. For Aaron and his sons, they made tunics of fine linen, the work of a weaver, and the turban of fine linen, the linen caps, and the undergarments of finely twisted linen. The sash was made of finely twisted linen and blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, the work of an embroiderer, as the Lord commanded Moses. They made the plate, the sacred emblem, out of pure gold and engraved on it, like an inscription on a seal, holy to the Lord. Well, this outfit of the high priest is important for us to know, not just because of its relation to the tabernacle, but also it represents the holy life. Each part of it represents an aspect of the holy life. So in a sense, we are to be clothed spiritually like the high priest was clothed materially. So the question is, are you holy? And let's look at this and see if this helps us to understand how to answer that question. First of all, we know that the work of the high priest began with sacrifice. He had to have a sacrifice made for him with blood, the atonement of blood, which we find throughout everything to do with the tabernacle and the temple and the priesthood. And if you're not under the blood of Christ, then none of this applies to you. You must have an experience of salvation. We start there. It's foundational to our Christian life. Now, just to go over again some of the symbolism and what it stands for, gold stands for divinity. White stands for purity and holiness. Red stands for the blood of sacrifice. Blue stands for heaven. Purple for royalty. So if you need to jot those down, just rewind the video here and write those down, because it'll help you understand all these things that are interwoven. It's meant to show that this is a package deal. It all goes together. You don't just have one or the other. It all goes together. Well, let's look at the first thing that the high priest had. He had white pants. And of course, those are the least visible of all the parts of the high priest's outfit. And they symbolize the hidden life. It's important that our life underneath, the part that nobody sees, not our public self, not even something seen by our spouses or our closest friends, the hidden life that's just seen only by God, that be pure. And remember, white stands for holiness and purity. So holiness begins on the inside and works its way to the outside. And so, my friends, the question is, are you holy? Have you had an experience with the Lord where you're holy? We think of the song by Albert Orsman that says, "Far past my busy hands, thine eye doth see, into the depths of mine, searching the plain design, gladdened when thou dost find, first of all, thee." If the Lord or anybody else could look into your inner heart, do you find that he's enthroned, that he is first, and that it is a pure place? Well, the second thing that we look at is the robe. It was one piece. It was seamless. And that's to symbolize that our experience is to be whole and without defect. God doesn't mean for you to have a patchwork kind of holiness. It needs to be through and through all that you are. Now, blue again represents heaven, and that's our destination and represents us being in the presence of God. There were golden bells, and the reason the high priest had to have those golden bells on was, frankly, if he entered into the Holy of Holies in an unworthy way, God would strike him dead. And the way that the people knew that the high priest was not dead is they could hear the bells as he moved around inside the Holy of Holies. And that tells us we should never approach God in a presumptuous manner. We should not presume upon God or act like just because we're good enough in other people's eyes that we're necessarily good enough in his eyes. We must be pure in his eyes and have a sense of awe for him. The pomegranates, it's a fruit, of course, and it represents the sweetness of a fruitful life before the Lord. Scarlet and purple were interwoven, and it reminds us both the scarlet, the blood, and purple, the royalty, and those go together. We think of Revelation 1, 5, and 6 that says, "To him who loved us and washed us from our sins in his own blood and has made us kings and priests to his God and Father." Now, the ephod had two parts joined at the shoulders by two onyx stones set in sockets of gold. And they were inscribed with the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, that talks to us about responsibility on our shoulders. You say, he carries that on his shoulders. I'm glad to get that off my shoulders. That talks about responsibility. And the ephod resting on the shoulders spoke about the responsibility that the high priest had to come on behalf of the people of Israel. And my friends, our salvation, our holiness is not just for ourselves, it's for our family. It's for, if you're in a place of ministry, it's for your people. It's for other people. We live not just to ourselves, we live as always as missionaries in the world, serving other people and on behalf of other people. Now, there was in that ephod, things were interwoven: the scarlet, the purple, the blue, and the gold, representing the totality of our Christian life that has to go together. Now, the other thing it talks about is a woven waistband, which was like a belt, really, that held the ephod together. And whenever you read about a belt, the idea of a belt, it represents service. We are to be a serving people. Again, it's not just for our own sake, it's to be practical service, doing what needs to be done. Now, then there was the breastplate of gold. It was approximately 9 inches by 18 inches. So you covered a good part of the chest. It had a pocket for the Urim and Thummim, and that literally means light and shadow. And that Urim Thummim was used to determine the will of God. We're not quite sure how it worked. We do know this, that if there was sin in the camp, if there was sin in the way, God would not answer through the Urim and Thummim. We see that in the example of King Saul, when he tried to get an answer and God would not answer him because of his sinfulness. Now, there were 12 precious stones on this breastplate, each with the name of a tribe of Israel, worn over the heart. And again, that speaks to us about responsibility. And, when you say that someone is on our heart, we mean that we are thinking about them, we care about them, we are carrying a burden for them. And the same thing is true here. The breastplate represents us carrying the people on our heart, the people that we love. Again, our spouses, our own family, those near us, our neighbors. But also, again, if you're in ministry, you carry your people on your heart. We seek their highest and best spiritual good, and we're careful in praying for them. And we say again that they are on our hearts. Now, the white bonnet is what finally topped off the high priest's dress. It had a blue ribbon around it. Now, we wear different types of hats to say something about it. I have a Salvation Army cap, but I actually have three. I have one that is white, I have one that is gray, and I have one that is black. And those three Salvation Army caps represent different places that we have served in the world where the uniform differed. And so if I put one on, it would say something like the gray one. I put that one on and say something about Jamaica or the Caribbean. If I put the white one on, it would say something about Singapore or in Papua New Guinea at the time. Now their uniforms changed to a different color, but at the time it was white. If I put on my black hat, that would be the one representing the United States, where I've served most of my time. But I also have other hats. I wear a baseball hat for the teams that I like, and so on. So I wear the hats to say something about myself, if you will. Well, on this headpiece that the high priest wore, it said, "Holiness to the Lord." Now, think about that. Of all the things that are written to be seen by everybody, what was written for the high priest was the little sentence, "Holiness to the Lord." That was what he was proclaiming in what he wore, and what topped all of the dress that the Lord gave him to wear to minister to him. And so we have to ask today, does holiness to the Lord top off all that you do for him? All that you want to say about your life in him? Is it holiness to the Lord? And if it's not, go before the Lord now and ask him to make you holy. God bless you.